She thought church was a place of refuge, her pastor a man of God. But one horrifying moment revealed a dark secret hidden behind the pulpit. Betrayed, silenced, and shamed, her truth would shake the entire congregation to its core. She was quiet, too quiet for a girl who used to sing loudly during choir rehearsals. Mui had always been full of life. From the small village of Odugby, she was the kind of girl who believed in miracles, faith, and second chances. That belief led her to Sweet Fountain of Life Ministries when she moved to the city to stay with her aunt, Veronica. Pastor Innocent, the man of the moment, the miracle worker, the spiritual father of thousands, was a celebrity in Christian circles. His fame stretched beyond the city. People traveled miles just to attend his services. He claimed he could turn a bitter fountain into a sweet fountain, and his congregation clung to his words like sacred scripture. Mui, just 19, was his receptionist, a voluntary position her aunt forced her into. "It is good to work in the house of God," Aunt Veronica always said. And Mui believed her. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Mui admired the pastor's charisma. He prayed for people. He healed the sick, or so they said. He gave prophecies that often came true. The women in the church worshipped the ground he walked on, and the elders referred to him as Daddy. But one evening, long after everyone had left, Mui returned to the church office to retrieve her charger. She was not prepared for what she saw. Pastor Innocent. Rebecca. Alone. Rebecca, a shy 16-year-old choir member, sat frozen in the office chair while the pastor stood too close, whispering something about a private cleansing session. Mui's eyes widened as Rebecca tried to move away, and Pastor Innocent caught her wrist. "Stop it!" Mui yelled. The room froze. Pastor Innocent turned slowly. Rebecca's eyes were filled with terror. But in that instant, Pastor Innocent changed. He stood tall and smiled. "You have misunderstood," he said calmly. "I was delivering her from a spiritual husband." Rebecca quickly composed herself and echoed, "Yes, it's true." Mui didn't believe it. But what could she say? Her word against theirs. At home, she told her aunt. But Veronica's reaction was cold, dismissive, even hostile. "You don't speak against a man of God," she warned. "If there's no evidence, there's no case." Mui wanted to scream, but she stayed silent. She decided she would talk to Rebecca privately after church. But when she searched for her on Sunday, Rebecca was gone. Not absent, gone. No one had seen her. Her phone rang out. Pastor Innocent stood tall in the pulpit, preaching about betrayal. Weeks passed. Then the unthinkable happened. It was another Sunday after service. Mui was walking through the back hallway when she heard muffled sounds from the counseling room. The door was slightly open. She peeked in and froze. Pastor Innocent again, but this time with another young girl. Not Rebecca. A different one. Younger. Struggling. "Stop!" Mui cried out as she barged in. This time, she wouldn't be silent. But it was too late. Within minutes, the scene turned upside down. The girl adjusted her clothes quickly, wide-eyed and silent. Pastor Innocent looked disappointed, not ashamed. And before Mui could even speak, the girl shouted, "He didn't do anything." "What are you saying?" Mui asked, confused. The door burst open. Pastor Innocent's wife, Mrs. Margaret, walked in, followed by two elders. "What's going on here?" Mrs. Margaret demanded. "She's accusing my husband." The girl pointed at Mui. Mui was speechless. And then it began, the fall. Rumors spread that Mui had a vendetta, that she was jealous, that she had tried to seduce Pastor Innocent but was rejected. Church members gossiped. "How dare she speak against the man of God?" Elder Maduka asked. "Is she not afraid?" Sister Agnes chimed in. Does she not fear God? Aunt Veronica, livid, threatened to throw her out. You came from the village to accuse my prophet, a man anointed by God himself. Mui had no support, no evidence, just her truth. She had to survive. She had no place to go. So, with a broken heart and a heavy hand, she wrote a letter. A letter of apology. Dear Pastor Innocent, with a heavy heart and tears in my eyes, I write to apologize to you over the accusation I made on the 2nd of March 2024. I am deeply sorry. My actions are regrettable and I will never repeat such a mistake again. It was the hardest thing she ever did. The next Sunday, the church was filled to capacity. Pastor Innocent stood proud. The power of God is moving like never before, he said. He waved her apology letter in the air. The devil tried to strike, but there was no shaking. No shaking. The crowd roared. She accused me, but now she has begged for forgiveness. He laughed. The people laughed too. Forgiveness flowed. So did blind loyalty. Mui sat in silence, alone, shamed. No one asked what really happened. No one asked about Rebecca. And yet, in the shadows of a lie, the truth stirred, waiting to erupt. The news of Pastor Innocent's arrest shook the foundation of Sweet Fountain of Life Ministries. It was as if a thunderbolt had struck from the heavens, splitting their reality into two, before the revelation and after. On Monday morning, the church compound, once bubbling with early morning prayers and bustling with the chatter of market women and businessmen seeking blessings, was silent. The gates remained half shut, a symbolic curtain drawn over a once hallowed stage. Neighbors whispered, journalists loitered outside the compound, and even the local vendors who sold akara and pap by the gate had moved their trays elsewhere. Sister Olachi's interview had gone viral across Nigeria. Clips of her tearful confession, her HIV status, and the shocking story of Sweet Fountain deliverance swept through every corner of social media. Programs on radio and television debated not just the fall of a so-called man of God, but the wider cultural silence around abuse in religious settings. At first, many church members refused to believe the story. It's a lie of the devil, one elder muttered angrily. How can the man who delivered my son from madness be a predator? But the tide turned quickly. More women began coming forward. Anonymous testimonies emerged. Some had been too ashamed, others had been threatened. One woman, a former usher in the church, admitted that 5 years ago she had been told to cleanse herself of bitterness in Pastor Innocent's prayer room. She had since moved to another town, carrying a burden of shame and a quiet illness. Her HIV status, too, was now public. The investigators were stunned. What began as one accusation had blossomed into a storm of testimonies, a trail of destruction wrapped in robes and oil and amens. Meanwhile, Mui, silent, shamed, and still living in her Aunt Veronica's home, was stunned when she saw her own face on television. A journalist, during coverage of Pastor Innocent's case, referred to her as the young woman who saved Rebecca. Rebecca! That name had not left her mind. The 16-year-old girl who, weeks ago, had been pulled away from danger, had now confessed everything. Her mother, Madame Susan, had gone public as well. And it was she, Susan, who tracked down Mui at the small restaurant where she now worked. It was a Sunday evening, the sky full of dust and fading orange light, when Madame Susan arrived at Aunt Veronica's door. Mui lives here, she asked gently. Veronica opened the door and blinked. Yes, who's asking? I'm her church member. Former church member, that is. Please, I came to thank her. Veronica allowed her in, and soon the three women sat in the small parlor, one carrying guilt, one carrying truth, and one carrying shame. Veronica wept quietly when she heard the full story. She had threatened to throw Mui out, made her write that apology letter, defended Pastor Innocent with her whole chest, and now this? I'm sorry, my child, she whispered, placing her hands over Mui's. I didn't know. I didn't believe. But I see it now. What followed was unexpected. MUI was invited to give an exclusive interview on national television. She initially declined, afraid of being re-victimized, afraid of the same people who once spat at her now cheering for her. But Madame Susan stood by her side. If you don't tell this story, she said, others like Rebecca won't be saved. So, she spoke. The show was called Voices of the Silenced, and MUI sat in a simple chair, her face bare, her voice strong. I was told I was possessed, she said. I was told I was bitter. And for a while I believed them. But I saw what I saw. And I wasn't wrong. She recounted that night again, the struggling girl, the locked door, the pastor with his hands where they should not be, and the weight of disbelief that followed. After the show aired, the Nigerian Women's Legal Aid Initiative reached out to her and others. A case was filed in court. The police added new charges to Pastor Innocent's record, multiple counts of sexual assault, coercion, spiritual manipulation, and knowingly infecting victims with HIV. Mrs. Margaret, the pastor's wife, remained mostly silent throughout. She appeared in court once, sobbing and refusing to look at her husband. When asked by the media whether she believed the women, she whispered, "I believe now." But too late. The final day of trial was dramatic. The courtroom was filled with reporters, activists, former church members, and victims. Some women wore black headscarves as a sign of mourning for their stolen dignity. Pastor Innocent, no longer in white robes or glistening shoes, sat in the accused dock with his head bowed. The judge's voice cut through the silence like a blade. This court finds the defendant guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. A collective gasp filled the room. Some women clapped. Others wept. Outside the courthouse, MUI stood with Madame Susan and Rebecca, holding their hands. The journalists begged her for a quote. She gave them just one sentence. "This is not just about me. It's about every girl who wasn't believed." In the months that followed, Sweet Fountain of Life Ministries was permanently shut down. Its property was seized, and the compound was turned into a temporary shelter for abused girls, managed by a coalition of Christian women's groups. MUI, with the help of donations and well-wishers, returned to school to study social work. Rebecca, now in therapy, smiled more. She wanted to become a lawyer, to fight for girls like me, she said. And Aunt Veronica? She joined a women's Bible study group that taught discernment and safety in spiritual spaces. Her pride was broken, but her heart was softening. The lesson lingered across the community. Do not be quick to silence voices that challenge power. Truth is often buried under robes and titles. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is see, and refuse to look away.